Okay. So, nandito pa po ba tayong lahat? Mag-unat-unat na muna. Isang napakagandang documentary yung ating napanood, no? And now we're gonna go to the part where we'll invite our panel of reactors for their comments and discussion about the documentary The Kingmaker. Before that, we want to recognize the presence of our FEU Chairman Emeritus, Mrs. Lourdes R. Montinola. She is in the meeting room in our Zoom room. Okay, allow me to introduce our panel of reactors. First is Kybart Pilikayan, a parliamentary researcher under the Legislative Research Division of the Bangsamoros Parliament, Policy Research and Legal Services. He also serves as a lecturer part-time at the Far Eastern University, teaching political science and international relations. He has a bachelor's degree in political science from the Rizal Technological University and a master's degree in international relations from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, a certificate in tourism studies from the same university, and a degree certificate program in peace and conflict resolution education from Miriam College. Our second guest panelist is Flor de Lis Abanto, coordinator of the digital content creation and development of the Far Eastern University, and a program host of the weekly radio program over DZRH, Discarte, formerly Supuin ang Korupsyon. And of course, our last guest of panel of speakers is Attorney Andres D. Bautista, the former chairperson of the Presidential Commissioner on Good Government, and a former Commission on Election chairman, and a former dean of the Institute of Law of the Far Eastern University. Magandang araw po sa ating mga panel of reactors. The floor is yours now. Maaari nating simulan ang ating reactors, no? Mula kay Mr. Kybart Pilikayan ng Department of Political Science. Sir Keb.
Good morning, everyone. I am honored to be one of the panel reactors for this eye-opening documentary film. I taught a course on special topics in Philippine politics a year ago, and one of my reference sources was this documentary. I even created a lesson and a film analysis as an assessment specifically for this. I had no idea that I'd be put in the same situation where I had to give my analysis and reaction to the movie. So I had to go back, and from there, I drew three main realizations from the film. The first is the power of perception. Imelda Marcos said several things throughout the documentary, but one that struck me the most was when she said perception is real, but the truth is not. I couldn't agree more. It's why we have so many unprincipled politicians who still want to run for the office. The powerful in the Philippines have the ability to influence the masses and create their own interpretation of events that suit them. Unfortunately, money and hollow promises may easily fool the masses. When citizens in our country are too busy working to put food on their tables, voting for and electing the correct leaders are their least concern. As a result, they simply vote for who can satisfy their immediate needs, and politicians such as the Marcoses have a lot of stolen money to spend on publicity and historical revisionism. People buy perception and not reality, and if we don't open our eyes, they will continue to rule our country. The second realization is a symmetric relationship. The film depicts our country by exposing the power imbalance and how leaders like Marcoses capitalized and abused it. How a majority of us are so poor and helpless while there are people in the same country who own millions just because of their power. It portrays a strong and alarming relationship between money and politics, as well as the nation's potentially disastrous implication if no one is held accountable. The Marcoses have stolen too much and have worked valiantly to maintain control. But as viewers of the film and citizens of the country she is attempting to lead, we must intervene to stop her in her tracks, to halt the Marcoses' climb to power. Imelda took advantage of the present power imbalance to launch a political career by supporting her family in reclaiming power. During Marcos Sr.'s two-decade rule, she was known not just for the controversy surrounding her extravagant lifestyle, but also for exercising massive control and power. Their family's effort to recover power are now driven by her narcissistic feeling of motherhood. But what kind of mother it was is and will she be when the majority of Filipinos suffer terribly as the result of their unacceptable actions? The film is a portrayal of how a harsh legacy can be revised and terribly reproduced if left unregulated and ignored. We've already lost and the Marcoses are back. This film serves as a reminder of why people must continue to fight for democracy, which leads me to my third realization: destroying democracy. The Kingmaker is a forewarning story about power of capital and political dynasty's ability to destroy democratic principles. The film portrays Imelda's husband as a one-man dictator, and they made no attempt to uphold the democratic norms that our predecessors established. Imelda and Ferdinand Marcos run a conjugal dictatorship, as evidenced by Imelda meeting with other international leaders as if it were her works. Imelda's delusion is a manifestation of a totalitarian narrative anchoring on a mythical past and distinct future. As can be seen, she was attempting to rehabilitate the reputation by encouraging her son, Bongbong Marcos, to run for the government's second highest position in 2016. It was an attempt to recreate history, a cacique democracy of her husband. Unfortunately, the movie accurately foreshadowed today's electoral dynamics with Junior now running for presidency. With the return of the Marcoses, cacique democracy will be strengthened. The film depicts the danger of cacique democracy to Filipinos. Political dynasty slowly undermined the country. Politicians, no matter how good, can be deceiving. They even use their family to take authority and influence that is not theirs. This brings us to a political reality that can serve as a warning to all Filipinos to avoid repeating the same mistakes. The Marcos family has lived a luxurious life out of the taxpayers' money, and now they have the arrogance to run for political office once more. So to conclude, you are destined to repeat history if you can't recall what happened in the past. I hope we'll learn our lessons. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kybart Pilikayan. Again, to our audiences in the Zoom meeting room, you may post your questions, reactions, or comments in the meeting chat box so that we can further discuss them later on in our question and answer forum. Okay, now, may we call on our next speaker, Ms. Flor de Lis Abanto, to give her reaction on the documentary. Flor?
Thank you very much, Sir Kiko. Allow me to share the PowerPoint. I will first give context to like what I am. I'm representing the voice or the analysis based on media. Hold on 1 second because I couldn't see. All right, hold on. Let me start with a definition of what a documentary is. According to Aldous Hyde, documentaries are important reality shaping communication because of its claim to truth. Documentaries are always grounded in real life and make a claim to tell us something worth knowing. A website that offers teachings on how to make documentaries also mentioned that documentaries are nonfiction. It captures reality. It is used to reveal an unusual, an interesting, or an unknown angle. Documentary filmmakers are often motivated to make their films because they feel a particular story or viewpoint is not being or adequately covered by mainstream media. So allow me now to continue with the discussions. Okay, Laura Greenfield's documentary. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I can't seem to see. Hold on. I have too many things on the screen right now. I can't see the document. All right. Laura Greenfield's Kingmaker is a stunning docu that exposes the sinister plot of the Marcoses to reframe and rewrite history. That Marcos' reign was the country's golden age. That there was economic prosperity, and yet data will tell you that this isn't so. The documentary also tells us that Imelda claimed that the Cold War ended because she had a meeting with Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong, and she was able to negotiate for an end. She said there were no beggars, no killings, and land grabbing. And yet, data would show, pictures would show that there were a lot. Okay, hold on. Okay, these are the data that indeed there was massive poverty, unemployment, and underemployment. That the meeting had taken place with Mao Zedong, and Bongbong Marcos was not a young and a knowing kid. This is the first quarter storm, and this negates claims that there were no violence, there were no killings, and there were no arrests. Makliing Dula. He was killed because he was opposing the construction of a dam. Indigenous people lost their lands. Once the Marcoses had got interest or got interested in a property, they can claim it, and nobody can contest that. Imelda also claimed that the Ferdinand Marcos was a hero, and yet documentaries have shown, research have shown that he wasn't. Okay, Imelda was really so obsessed with a lot of grandeur, extravagance, and the documentary revealed Imelda's psychosis. I'm sorry, but I don't intend to make fun of one's mental health, but the film showed that the naive, gentle lady turned into a vicious and ruthless woman obsessed with grandiose display of wealth, power, and influence. She was very cunning. And she used the recording of the Dovey Beams and Ferdinand Marcos's tryst as a weapon to make the latter give in to all her whims and fantasies. Imelda enjoyed the attention and influence and power she wielded as a first lady, that she never wanted to end this privileged life. Thus, she wanted Bongbong Marcos to become the country's president one day. Okay, so she had created a lot of these grand buildings at the expense of human lives. These are not liquidated, funds were misused, and we have a couple of white elephants. In the slide, you would see the Coconut Palace. On the right side, you would see the Santo Niño Shrine in Tacloban. And then, of course, the famous film center, which was built for the Manila International Film Festival, and lives were lost because she was rushing the construction. Fast forward, Bongbong Marcos is prodded by the matriarch and the sister to regain power. And this is because they wanted to control government and go home. As Tony Gonzaga says, go back home to Malacanang. Let me prefer an explanation why the Marcoses are somehow successful in painting the glory years of martial law, and why many of us are drained arguing with diehards who refuse to believe about the illegal wealth, the plunder, the killings, and the monstrous plot of the family. I was almost 12 years old when martial law was declared, and our family was based in Cebu City. Just before PD 1081 or martial law was declared, I saw on television and papers about the violent protests on the streets, where several protesters, mostly students, were fired at and killed. That was the second quarter storm when I was at 12 years old. The day after the announcement of martial law, Ferdinand Marcos issued Letter of Instruction number 1. And may I read? It was used This was a directive to the Secretary of National Defense so that they can prevent the use of privately owned newspapers, magazines, radio and television facilities, and all other media of communications for propaganda purposes against the government and its duly constituted authorities, or for any purpose that tends to undermine the faith and confidence of the people in our government and aggravate the present national emergency. You are hereby ordered forthwith to take over and control or cause the taking over and control of all such newspapers, magazines, radio and television facilities, and all other media of communications, wherever they are, for the duration of the present national emergency or until otherwise ordered by me or my duly designated representative. All media then ceased to operate. We were no longer having access to information. We didn't know what was happening, and curfew was imposed. Months later, some media outfits were allowed to operate again, but there were a handful. And these few selected papers and broadcast stations were allowed because they were allies of the Marcoses. Manila Bulletin was owned by Hans Menzi. The Philippine Daily Express, Banahaw Broadcasting Company, RPN 9 was operated by his crony, Roberto Benedicto. And the Philippine Journal was, of course, operated by Imelda's brother, Kokoy Romualdez. The Department of Public Affairs and the Office of Media Affairs screened and approved all the news releases, even in these friendly media outfits. Certainly, none of those that were critical of martial law, the Marcoses and the cronies, ever came out. No news about that. There was a blackout. In short, media and its contents were sanitized. Vocal journalists were imprisoned or killed. People who did not have access to mosquito press did not know what was going on. People, media, the underground media like We Forum, Malaya, the Philippine Collegian, and even campus papers like the FEU's Advocate were somehow able to report what is exactly going on. But not many people got access to it. Many did not know and hear of the abuses of human rights, plunder, excessive lifestyles of the Marcoses, and the real truth on the state of the nation. Textbooks pictured Imelda and Marcos as si malakas at maganda at ama ang ina ng bagong lipunan sa bansang Maharlika. So brainwashing was facilitated by textbooks, media was heavily controlled, and if you're a member of the mosquito press, somehow they will find you, they will close it down, and they would arrest you. So how could the real situation come out? People were in the blind, unless, like you and I, a few rather, had access. Radio and TV, as well as community loudspeakers, filled the airwaves with the jingle you hear in BBM's rallies, ang bagong lipunan or ang new society. At times, regular programming was interrupted with Marcos going on air, and all radio stations and TV stations had the same broadcast. That's what we call pooled broadcasting. Now, with commentators and journalists behind bars, the public could not make sense of what were lies and propaganda posted in media. Okay, so allow me again to share. The public did not know how the Marcoses got illegal gotten wealth. The public, general public, did not know the truth behind the proxy accounts and the dummies and how they were able to get away with it. the public were not informed unless you were able to participate in sit-ins in campuses. Did not know that there were cronies or very special people, sacred people, who were able to amass so much power and wealth during those times. And the names and faces are here. It's only now that some of this have been coming out, unless, of course, during the time you had access to information. Now, allow me to continue. As I said, many were not as lucky as I was, who had access to the Mosquito Press and campus sit-ins, where we discussed about Pepsi. No, not the drink, but the political, economic, and cultural situations. Control of the media and silencing of the press paved the way for the public submission to the narratives of the Marcoses that martial law was the country's glorious days and that BBM can restore all of that. The Marcoses are masters of deception and manipulation, and they extended their magic wand of propaganda to this day to enable Bongbong to reclaim the seat of power. Political analysts say that as early as 2016, the new media, social media, was weaponized to spread their narrative and to destroy the image, the psyche, the lives of anyone who gets in their way. So you see here accounts from various newspapers showing you how the different forms of social media have been utilized and continue to be utilized. And this has been going on, not just last year, but it has been going on for many years. The revisionism, the narrative that they want. And this is what we fear. The Kingmaker documentary has effectively communicated to us how the Marcoses twisted real stories by juxtaposing this lies of theirs with footage from news archives that were not made up. There were reports from various news sources, ABS, GMA, Inquirer, Rappler, Manila Times, Manila Bulletin. The lies that Imelda blurted out were proven actually false. Not real. These narratives were untrue. And the news did that. And there were a lot of testimonies coming from the friends of the Marcoses, the human rights victims, the displaced Kalawit residents, the veterinarian, and a contractor, an engineer. They told you what was really happening then. But unfortunately, not many of these information landed in the newspapers during the martial law years. So not many people knew exactly what went on. The FEU community is fortunate to hear it straight from the horse's mouth and from a very lively character, Imelda. And I'd like to quote some of the lines that struck me. I saw the English version because I couldn't capture the beauty of what Imelda wishes to say if I go for the Filipino version. So allow me to share that slide and the quotations. And I hope these quotations will provide a fodder for thought on how we will vote for May 9. She says, I miss the clout of being First Lady. I have 170 bank accounts. She said, and Kybart did mention that, they are good manipulators of perceptions. That perception is real and the truth is not. Lastly, the one which really struck me, she said, and why Marcoses then and now will always try to control media. And if they can't control the mainstream media now, they went for very popular social media to push their narratives. Because according to Imelda, straight from the horse's mouth, she said, the gun can kill you only up to your grave, but the media can kill you beyond your grave and to infinity. So, give those what she mentioned quotes some more thought on how the Marcoses will try all their means to push their narrative that we were once a great nation under Marcos and the solution, and to bring it back to our glory, bring us back to glorious days, is no one else than to have Bongbong Marcos and his minions back to his home in Malacanang. I would close thanking you, everyone, for this few minutes. Magandang maraming salamat po at isang maliwanag na umaga. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Flor.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Akif. Back to you, Kev.
Okay, maraming salamat po ulit, Ma'am Flor. And now, we would like to recognize the presence of the former president of the Far Eastern University, Dr. Lydia Charles. She is with us in our Zoom meeting room. And now let's hear from our last reactor for today's event, Attorney Andy Bautista, who himself is featured or was featured in the documentary The Kingmaker. Attorney Andy, the floor is yours.
Maraming salamat, Kiko, at maraming salamat sa FEU para sa pagkakataong makausap kayo ngayong umaga. I think that Dr. Lourdes Reyes Montinola is in the house, and I wanted to just say thank you for the opportunity to having worked for FEU with for 16 years. And I had this great professional relationship with two FEU presidents, Dr. Edelberto de Jesus, as well as Dr. Lydia Chaus. Great presidents, and I know also Dr. Mike Alba is doing a great job. And I'd like to thank FEU for hosting this Kingmaker watch party. Maraming sinabi si Professor Flor, no? And kumbaga, I think it really captures everything that we wanted to convey about what's happening right now in our community, as well as with what this movie tried to convey. Siguro, ang kagandahan itong sining ito, sa aking palagay, ay dalawa. Unang-una, si Lauren Greenfield, na hindi ko naman talaga kilala. At, again, yung aming, when she was interviewing me, and this is very funny because I got interviewed in the movie 3 times. One was when I was chairman of PCGG in 2014. Second, when I was chairman of COMELEC in 2016. And finally, when I was in exile in Oklahoma in 2018. At nung, after 2016, nakalimutan ko nitong mga interview na ito eh. So much so that in 2018, when I was in exile in Oklahoma, yung kanyang producer, tinawagan ako. In fact, hindi ako tinawagan yung aking kapatid na doktor, no? At sabi niya, gusto na naman daw nila akong ma-interview. So, tinanong ako ng aking kapatid, uy, merong gusto makakausap sa iyo. Tapos sabi ko, ano ba yan? Sabi nila, na-interview ka na daw dati about the Marcoses. Sabi ko, hindi ko maalala talaga eh. Sabi nila, ano maganda, kausapin mo na lang sila. And so, in 2018, and I remember it was June of 2018, wherein I spoke to Bill Mellor, who is a Bloomberg writer who was a co-producer of this movie. And he said, Andy, we interviewed you twice for this project. And if you'll remember, this is a project first about the animal farm in Calawit, Palawan, and about the inbreeding that was going on in terms of these animals. But eventually it evolved into the political inbreeding that was happening in the Philippines. And then, he was saying, could we interview you again? And I was thinking to myself, what are they talking about? Because really at that point in 2018, I did not remember. And then it took a few weeks before they were able to convince me to be interviewed again for a third time. And I remember this lady, Jennifer Kopsik, she was one of the producers. She said, Andy, after all is said, because at that time, I was in trouble, my family was in trouble. And that to me was really a bigger challenge that I was facing. And she said, Andy, after all is said and done in these short lives of ours, you want to be in the right side of history. And that is what convinced me to get interviewed, for a third time. So, yan ang aking naging role dito sa Kingmaker. At wala akong kinalaman, sinasabing I helped daw produce. Nako, Kingmaker was produced by Showtime, which is a production of CBS, which is a huge US company. Lauren Greenfield is a professional. And talagang, she just came out with this film as it is. Number two, at siguro din ito napakahalaga. Ang kagandahan nitong documentary na ito, kumbaga yung mga Marcos mismo, ang nagsasabi kung ano ba sa tingin nila ang katotohanan. Ngayong laganap ang fake news, tsaka disinformation, di ba? Maganda talagang marinig mo yung balita mula sa bibig nung nagsasabi nito. Ako, as far as I'm concerned, sinabi na ni Imelda yung sinabi niya, sinabi na ni Bongbong yung sinabi niya, sinabi na ni Sandro yung sinabi niya. Hayaan na ang taong bayan ang maghusga doon sa kanilang mga sinabi. Hindi na kailangan magkaroon ng editorializing. So, kung kaya napakahalaga nito pelikulang ito at maganda nga nung ating mga kasama sa FEU. And as I said, I value the 16 years that I worked with FEU, the best years of my professional life. And again, I wish to thank Dr. Montinola, Gianna Montinola, Martin Lopez. Thank you for this opportunity to be speaking again to the FEU community.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Andy Bautista. At ngayon, gusto naming tawagin si Rigel Alvaran, convener ng Tamang Boto, to give a synthesis of the reactions we heard from our guest speakers.
Hello. To start off, with only just 10 days before the national and local elections, especially when there is a candidate from the family of a dictator that is vying for the highest position in our country, talking about our history that we experienced before are the things that we can do to open the eyes of the public to the reality of our country. Upon watching the film, we can clearly see how the Marcoses see themselves as heroes that will save the Philippines from its suffering. A question that I have in mind while watching the film was, how can we forget our past when it is the reason why we're experiencing difficulty in some sectors of our community in present times? The fact that there are survivors means that these people experienced trauma and endured agony. We must never forget that what happened before and not let electorates revise our history. On the latter part of the film, they have connected the family of Marcoses to the current regime of Duterte. One line that piqued my interest is when they said, hindi ka makapagsumbong sa mga pulis dahil pulis mismo ang gumagawa. It reminded me of a question before that was raised to us during a seminar wherein the speaker said, how can you seek justice from your own killer? Let this be question and eye-opener to all of us and be reminded how powerful our votes are. Our vote dictates the actions of our government for the next few years. As our panel reactors talks about perception, democracy, and their experiences, one thing is clear. Starting a conversation and discussing these things shouldn't be confined only to this room, to this event, and even our university. To our participants, this is a challenge for us to continue the conversation. Opening up an engagement about our society is integral not only for the youth sector, but all of the generation that in our society. The problems that we encounter cuts across sectors and it concerns every Filipino. Let us vote this upcoming national elections for This Is Our Voice. Tama raos, as I end my synthesis, lagi nating tatandaan na ang na boto dapat tamang boto. Tayo ay hindi lang boboto, pero boboto tayo ng tama sa darating na halalan. Magandang tanghali po sa lahat at maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Rigel. At ngayon, inimbitahan ho natin ang ating mga speakers. Maaari niyo ho bang buksan ang inyong mga camera? We have some questions here. And again, to our live audience, to those who would want to ask questions to our speakers, please approach the center microphone. And to those in the Zoom meeting room, you may post your questions in the chat box or you may raise your hand so that you'll be properly recognized. Okay, so ayun po. Meron po ba tayo mga katanungan mula sa ating chat box? Anyway, ako po, meron po akong tanong ko, no, na matagal ko na ding pinag-iisipan kung bakit tayo umabot sa ganito, no? Na why do you think, no, sa ating pong mga speakers, bakit ho kaya naging ganito kalakas ang pagtanggap nating mga Pilipino, no, sa parang pagbabalik ng mga Marcos, no, despite how many evidences and historical facts have been shown, we still saw how welcoming most or if not some of our fellow countrymen for the return of the Marcoses. Bakit po kaya? Sir Keb, Ma'am Flor, Attorney Andy, you may share your thoughts on the questions po.
Siguro ako na po mauna. No? I think in political science, hindi nagtitrickle down yung political education sa grassroots. I think when we talk about political education, at lalo na pag sinasabing voters education, lagi lang siyang nangyayari tuwing before election. I think when we teach politics, when we teach voters education to the public, especially the grassroots, dapat maipaunawa sa atin kung ano yung importansya ng history sa ating kinakaharap ngayon, no? Mostly kasi yung paraan ng pagtuturo sa history sa atin ay more on trivial ones. Kung kailan pinanganak, kailan nangyari ganitong event, saan naganap, no? Without contextualizing anong epekto ng history na ito sa mangyayari sa future. And I think there should be a reform in our history, especially in political education, no? At ito yung reason kung bakit hindi talaga tayo nagkakaroon ng political maturity at hindi na ipauunawa sa grassroots despite the existence of the facts na nangyayari ito at hindi siya nagkakaroon ng critical thinking, no? Hindi na shape yung critical thinking sa masa because hindi nga very trivial yung pagtuturo natin ng politics at ng history. So yun po.
Pwede kong dagdagan, Sir Kiko. Thank you, Kev. Pareho tayo ng parang tanong, no? Naitanong ko din yan actually sa programa namin. Bakit ganon? Bakit hindi alam yung nangyari? Bakit nalang tinatanggap ang mga narratives na pinupush ng mga Marcoses? Tinanong ko yung mga historians, mga nagtuturo ng history. At ito ang tumatak sa isip ko, sa mga sinabi nila. Alam nyo, there's something really wrong with our educational system. Kung maaalala nyo, yung pagtuturo ng history, magsisimula tayo yung waves of migration from, di ba, na-proven na mali naman pala, yung mga negritos, yung mga Malay, etc. Hanggang, tapos papasok tayo sa sa Spanish period, ang haba nun, tapos yung American liberation, tapos yung Japanese occupation, tapos after that again, liberation ulit ng mga Amerikano. Ang haba ng history. Matatapos ang semestre, ang school year, na hindi na nabigyan ng puwang o enough na time mapag-usapan ang martial law, kung ano ang nangyari. So, tapos, maliban doon, kasi tinanong ko, bakit? Wala ba tayong masyado mga materials patungkol sa martial law? Muli, uulitin ko, nung panahon ng martial law, takip po ang mga bibig ng karamihan. Takot na mahuli. Ang mga libro, mga pahayagan, at saka mga television stations, radio stations na may mga commentaries noon. Sila po ay, kung meron man naglalakas loob, ay bago po ito maging mas mapalawak, nakukulong, napapatay. Yung mga, kaya sinabi ko kanina, swerte lang kung may mga maliliit na grupo sa mga universidad na nakakaupo, na may tawag nila ay sit-in. Napapakinggan mo, may mga dula, nalalaman mo ang katotohanan. Pero paano yun? Ilan lang yun na may merong oportunidad na makapanood nito, makakuha ng kopya ng advocate ng Collegian. Hindi siya napapalaganap kasi nung panahon ng martial law, and ito na yun, yung mga lola at nanay, no? At yung mga anak nila, sinasabi, hindi, maganda yung martial law ng panahon na yun. Dumagsa din ang kabastusan sa mga pelikula. So these are forms of diversion, no? So dumami rin ang mga foreign programs. Ine-entertain tayo sa media. Maraming comedy shows, maraming drama. Pero wala kang makikitang nag-a-analyze sa sitwasyon. So because of that, ang education system at media system mo na control ng mga Marcoses, nung martial law. At ngayon, sabi mo, wala namang martial law, bakit patuloy pa rin yan? Kasi nga, marami ang hindi nakaalam sa katotohanan. So, yun po yung aking explanation. Thank you so much po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sige, dadagdag lang ako kay Ken at kay Flor. Well, tama yung sinabi nila, no? At kung isipin mo talagang merong pabaya na nangyari. At ako, at this point do, ayoko nang magturo kung sino merong kasalanan kasi in a way, lahat tayo may kasalanan. Pero siguro moving forward, ano yung dapat nating gawin? At ito dapat nating alalahanin doon, no? Na itong pagbalik ng mga Marcos talagang pinagplanuhan. At ito'y nagsimula noong 2010, nung tumakbo si BBM bilang senador. At I think sinabi ito dun sa pelikula, yung Cambridge Analytica, which is a huge social media group, na talagang ang kanilang specialty is to rebrand and to revise history. At ito mga ito, magagamit mo lang kung marami kang pera. At yun ang masakit eh. Kumbaga, ang mga Pilipino talagang ginisa sa sariling mantika. Yung nakaw na yaman ang ginagamit para maibalik ang mga Marcos sa kapangyarihan. So, pero nandiyan na yan. So, ang dapat natin gawin, well, kumbaga sa basketball, ano mo, FEU Tamaraos, number 1 sa basketball, ang laki ng lead nila kasi nauna sila eh. Hindi natin nakita kaagad kung ano yung kanilang game plan. Kung kaya shoot sila ng shoot, marami silang points na nakuha agad. Ngayon, bumabawi tayo. At I must say though, yun ang nangyayari sa nakalipas ng mga linggo, nakakatuwa talaga, nakakabigay ng pag-asa. Yung volunteerism, yung mga rally na nangyayari, hindi ko to nakita in 1986. At ito talaga ay, it gives you hope na talagang yung kabataan are coming out to reclaim, our country and our history. Ang aking lang talaga ngayon, ang aking kumbaga agam-agam ay kumbaga again sa basketball kasi napakadami na yung ginawang kasinungalingan at laganap na maling impormasyon kung kaya't makakahabol pa ba given that we have 10 days to go before the elections. So yun talagang hamon. But at the same time, yung mga ginagawa natin ngayon, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga watch party, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga discussions para nga malaman ng ating mga mamamayan, lalo na ng ating kabataan, kung ano talaga yung nangyari. Kasi bilang, COMELEC noong 2016, sinasabi ko parati nga na if soul is to body, democracy is to, if soul is to body, elections are to a democracy. Napakahalaga ng halalan para sa isang demokrasya. Pero ang pundasyon ng isang maayos na halalan ay ang informed vote. Yung botong pinag-isipan at talagang binasihan sa tamang kaalaman. Ang problema talaga ngayon yung fake news at yung disinformation na talagang pinakawalan. At paano magagawa ito? Dahil sa kayamanan, dahil sa nakaw na yaman na hindi na ibalik sa ating kabambayan. Kaya ito talaga, it's a very complicated situation. But as I said, I see hope because of what's going on in our country. The youth is coming up, and I'm sure FEU is at the forefront of that. And that's why gawin pa natin itong ginagawa natin, and let's just keep on playing. Alam mo, FEU, kahit losing by 15 points, kaya pa yan. Laban lang ng laban.
Okay, maraming salamat, Attorney Andy, Sir Kev, and Ma'am Flor. Ngayon, meron tayong isang tanong dito sa ating chat box, and I think this is related to my earlier question. And this talks about now, how can we bring the truth and facts regarding the Marcoses to the people today who have no access and capabilities, such as those who live in poverty and people who do not finish their education. Basically, paano po ba natin dadala itong mga gantong usapan na ginagawa natin, kagaya ngayong umaga, sa mga tao na walang access or very limited access sa mga gantong platforms. Ma'am Liz, from the Department of Communication, I think it's good that you start our discussion on this question.
Thank you so much, Sir Kiko. Unang-una, alamin po natin, ano po ang mga media na ginagamit ng intended audience natin. O sabi nila, target audience. Ito ba sila ay palaging nanonood ng TikTok? Sila ba ay nahuhumaling sa mga Facebook news or post na maiklian lang? Gamitin natin ito as our weapons, tulad ng paggamit ng kampo ni Bongbong. Paano din? Alam nyo, dahil sinabi mo sa masa, wala siguro silang access na makasali sa isang Zoom na napag-uusapan at napapanood yung Kingmaker, no? Pag-usapan ano nangyari ng panahon na yon. Alam nyo, medyo mahirap to. Pero ito yung mga strategiya patungkol po sa pagpapalaganap ng impormasyon ng araw, no? Mapa-agrikultura o environment, etc. Comics, drama sana. Yung pagtatanghal, kunwari ang ating FEU performers sa theater group natin, pwede silang magtanghal dun sa mga liblib na mga lugar para maparating kung ano talaga ang mga nangyayari. At palagi ang kinakailangan po, i-back up nyo po ng suporta by showing news clippings or video na hindi nyo po gawa, kundi ito po ay nailahad ng ibang media para po tatayo po ang inyong argumento. Humanap po tayo ng mga taong nabuhay nung panahon ng martial law. Pinanganak ng mga panahon na yon. Tulad ko, alam ko po kung gaano kahirap nung panahon na yon. May poster ka lang ng mga kliing dulag, meron na pong darating sa bahay mo, kakatok at meron ng aso. Ano yung aso? Hindi asong tumatahol. Kundi arrest, search and seize order. Pwede ka nang hulihin. Pwede ka nang ikulong. No? Dapat ito mapalaganap yung mga kwentong ito. Tayo, bawat isa sa atin, ay merong responsibilidad. And aaminin ko po, hindi ho ganun kadali to convince them, to tell them that what BBM's camps are saying are fake news, that these are manipulated information. Ang hirap po, kasi naramdaman ko yan, ang hirap po makipag-argue dun sa mga diehard na Marcos. But you should not give up. So yun po ang aking masasabi, Sir Kiko.
Salamat, Ma'am Flor. Attorney Andy, Sir Kev, any thoughts that you want to add?
Well, ako, ang aking dadaglag lang. Alam mo yung nangyayari ngayon, yung H to H, house to house, tao sa tao, puso sa puso. Alam mo, ginagawa yan usually on a local campaign. You know, kumbaga, kung tumatakbo ka bilang barangay captain or councilor, mayor, ginagawa mo yan. For the first time again in our elections, ginagawa yan in a national scale. At sa totoo lang, yan talaga ang pinakamahalagang paraan ng pangangampanya. Na pag-isipin mo talaga, dapat mong kausapin ang isang tao bilang isang tao. And to me, again, that is so admirable. This is what, kumbaga, pure, true democracy is all about. And ako, namamangha because I am just amazed about how many people are doing this. And it's not just in Metro Manila, it's all over the country. And I'm sure, again, ang FEU ay one of those that is leading the groups that are doing that.
On my part naman po, sir, I think, as I said earlier, yung political education, hindi siya nag-trickle down sa grassroots because one of the reason is that yung information ay nakasit lang sa higher education level. So kumbaga, yung access ng information, although tinuturo natin sa mga estudyante ay hindi siya nag-trickle down sa grassroots. Like say for example, how do we educate? We don't need to go further sa malayong lugar just to inform people, even within the confines of our houses. Pwede mong ituro kung ano yung politics, no? I think yung truth and facts regarding the Marcoses, it's more than just antagonizing the Marcoses. It's really more on the fight for a good governance. And I think mas importante na ipaliwanag sa kanila kung ano ba ang good governance, i-translate into the regional languages. Like ano ba ang good governance? Kasi when we talk about good governance, hindi naintindihan. Pero kapag i-translate mo siya sa maayos na pamamahala, mas maintindihan siya ng mga grassroots. And personally, doon ko na-realize yan, and I think a month ago I launched a Facebook page where it's dedicated on teaching social and political awareness and political issues, translating it into Bisaya. I am a Bisaya, a Boholano. And that's one of the method na very effective na nakakapag-educate ka sa mga tao kung ano ba talaga yung politika at ano ba yung good governance, ano ba yung gaano ka-importante ang good accountability, gaano ka-importante yung transparency. And I think by translating this very political jargons into regional languages, into languages that the common people can understand, can help them really understand and really vote for a correct leader. At yun po yung very important. No? And I also agree with Ma'am Liz na kung sino yung target audiences natin. Are they really, with the advent of the new media, the social media, nandun na ang labanan ay nandun sa TikTok and sa Facebook, nandun yung disinformation, but as well as hindi lang po naka-confine doon sa new media, but rather also doon sa baba, no, sa mismong baba ang tunay na laban. So it's a lot of, it's a what they call this, multi-directional na pamamaraan sa pagsugpo nitong fake news and historical revisionism. Ayun po.
Okay, maraming salamat Sir Keb, Ma'am Flor, and Attorney Andy. No, it struck me yung sinabi ni Attorney Andy na house to house, no? Dahil ako mismo ay nagpa-participate sa mga house to house na ito sa aming bayan. At talaga nga naman na nakakatuwa na open, no? Open ang mga tao na makinig sa ating mga advokasya. Okay, meron pa ho tayong isang tanong dito, and I think this is a question, a contemporary question on sa mga issue ngayon, no? At ang tanong ay, paano po naging 203 billion ang 23 billion estate tax ng mga Marcoses? At bakit po nalitis si Ferdinand Marcos sa ibang bansa kahit Pilipino po siya? Pwede daw po bang malitis si Duterte at Kibuloy like Marcos? Attorney Andy, I think you're the best person to answer this question. Thank you.
Sige, may konti akong kaalaman sa mga bagay na yan, so ako sasagot. No? Okay, pwede bang malitis ang isang Pilipino sa ibang bansa? Oo, kung meron siyang mga ari-arian sa ibang bansa at kung magbabiyahe siya dun sa mga bansang yon. Alam naman natin na yung mga Marcos, nung sila ay nasa kapangyarihan, marami silang mga ari-arian, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, kundi sa Amerika. Kung kaya't nung sila ay lumisan noong 1986, kinasuhan sila ng mga human rights victims kung saan sila nakatira at that time, which was in Hawaii. At nakakuha nga ng mga judgments ang mga human rights victims at saka yung founding mga heirs ni Rojas laban sa kanila Kung kaya yan, hindi ba isang issue yan kung babalik sila sa Amerika, talagang pwede silang ma-contempt at pwede silang habulin ng mga claimants na ito kasi nga meron talagang court judgment laban sa kanila. Ngayon yun sa estate taxes, well, yan ay, pag sinabi mong buwis, yan ay sa BIR. No? Kami sa PCGG, ang aming habol ay nakaw na yaman. Pero pag hindi ka nagbabayad ng buwis, yan ay nasa BIR. Ang aking pagkaalam is that in 1997, ay nagpataw ang BIR ng buwis na 23 billion pesos laban sa estado ni Ferdinand Marcos Sr. At ang mga administrator niyan ay sina Madam Imelda Marcos at saka si Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Itong 23 billion pesos hindi nila binayaran kung kaya marami ng penalty at surcharges na nagpatong-patong. At ngayon, ang total niyan ay 203 billion pesos at umaakyat pa. At ang tanong ng taong bayan, siyempre pagka namamatay ang isang tao, kailangan ka magbayad ng estate tax. Bakit sila hindi nagbabayad ng estate tax? At kailangan pa naman yung buwis na yan. At again, ang tanong, kung ikaw ay magiging pangulo, dapat ikaw ay maging halimbawa. Dapat ikaw ay maging ehemplo sa bawat tao. Kung hindi ka nagbabayad ng iyong buwis, bakit magbabayad yung mga karaniwang tao ng buwis? So yun ang talagang malaking issue na laban sa kanila.
Okay, maraming salamat, Sir Andy. At meron po tayong tanong dito ngayon mula sa ating live audience. Pwede ho ba sa center stage? Please introduce yourself and question.
Good afternoon po. My name is Kathleen po. I'm from FEU IDS. Yung question ko po is, with this kind of production, gaano po kaya siya nagiging complicated since hindi po alam or in a sense, at some point yung mga sinabi din po kasi nila ng Marcos family were kind of against them doon sa pagpapalabas sa film. How complicated po kaya yon in terms po doon sa film production naman po? Na parang hindi ba sila parang nagkaroon ng problem with the Marcos family po?
Ayun nga po. At kasama po natin dito sa audience ngayon si Sir Babsi Morabe. And I think he wants to share his thoughts as well on the question. Sir Babsi?
Yeah, hi. So to answer the question regarding how complicated it is for the film producer with regards to how the Marcoses or Imelda answered the question. Well, number one, syempre, in creating a documentary, everything is laid out on the table. Meaning, binibigay lahat ng dokumentarista yung kanyang objective dun sa kanyang mga tatanungin. Okay? O sa kanyang script, kumbaga. No, bago magsimula ang lahat, before you start firing all the questions, everything is being laid down to the subject, and it's basically the prerogative of the subject to answer the question or not. So definitely, hindi naging complicated yun para sa film producer because it's mutual. Binigay ang tanong, sinabi ang technique kung paano siya isushoot, sinagot ang tanong, mismo si Mrs. Marcos ang nagsalita in her own free will kung ano yung mga sinabi niya doon, and lumabas kung anong dapat lumabas, That's one thing about documentary. Number one, it's conversational. Pag nagtanong ka ng nagtanong at na-engage mo ang iyong interviewee, magsasalita yan. Regardless kung yan ay nasa script, pwedeng lumihis ng konti sa script, pero the truth will come out, given that you fire the right questions. It's unconventional. Documentary is unconventional in a way that wala naman take two yan . Walang take three. Pag binato mo yung tanong, tinutok mo ang camera, dun lumalabas yung rawness, yung pagiging real, yung totoo ng isang documentary. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, teka, ulitin natin, mali yung sagot mo. Diba? Teka, ulitin natin kasi hindi ganyan yung dapat na mangyari. So, if you do that, it defeats the purpose of a documentary. So, para sa akin, it's more of yung complications, medyo minimal yan. In fact, lumabas talaga yung dapat palabasin dun sa documentary na yun. And I think that's my 2 cents regarding this question.
Thank you,
Pwede ko
Sir
dagdagan,
Patsy.
Sir Kicks?
Yes, go ahead, Ma'am Flor.
Alright, oo. Pwede ko na dagdagan sandali, no? Ang maganda nito, syempre, si Imelda was very candid. Gusto niya magyabang eh. Gusto niya ipagyabang yung kanyang kayamanan. Gusto niya ipagyabang na she was a very influential woman, that she had so much power. She can have what she wants, no? And dahil ganun yung character niya, hindi niya akalain na lalo palang makakasama. Akala niya, it will further documentary, will be able to perpetuate the narrative na everything was wonderful, fantastic during the martial law. But remember, as I defined the documentary a while ago, ang gusto kong ipalabas ng dokumentaryo, ano ang katotohanan. So kung ano man ang sinabi ni Imelda, hahanapin niya ang mga pruweba. Kung talagang sinabi ni Imelda ay siya ay niloko, she was cheated and she felt she was a victim, pinakita naman ng dokumentaryo yon, no? Yung pambababae ni Ferdinand Marcos. Kung sinabi niya na meron akong 170 banks. Oh, imagine that. Nagyabang pa siya. Meron pa pala siyang bank accounts spread all over the world na hindi nahawakan natin, no? Ang ginawa ng documentaries nila Lauren Greenfield and her crew was of course to collect as much materials coming from both sides, no? From Imelda, and of course what will prove or disprove what she claims. And it's a tedious process kasi lahat ng mga na-interview mo, sabi ni Sir Bobsy, it's all natural, ita-transcribe mo yon, and then it requires diligence to be able to piece them together and come up with one narrative kung ano talaga ang katotohanan. Madugo ang proseso kasi hindi ka pwede magpalabas ng isang material na wala kang supporting evidence. So malaking laking trabahong ginawa, no? That's why you saw that at the end of the film, ang dami sa credit sila, ang dami nilang in-acknowledge na sources ng information at marami silang pinasalamatan. So, yun, Sir Kicks.
Okay, maraming salamat, Ma'am Flor. And I think we can now have our last question for today's discussion. And the question is, the result of the presidency for the upcoming elections is unpredictable. If things took a big turn and the Marcoses came back to power, do you think it is possible again to have another people power revolution? Sir Kybart, you may start the discussion on this question.
There is a possibility na magkakaroon ng ganon when given that there are many the spirit of voluntarism is really high ngayon po the coming election. We can anticipate that there would be, but it's too early to say na magkakaroon ng ganon because the condition nagbabago yung every week nagkakaroon ng surprises per week sa election na to. Para siyang drama series, Filipino drama na may twists and turns na nangyayari, and it could be, if we build a scenario building on this one, it could happen na magkaroon ng ganon, no? But there are other options as well, no? Like say for example, like electoral protests na pwede namang mangyari, and options that are more diplomatic, that doesn't need to be that massive. But if mas feasible yung collective action, and then that would be siguro mas prefer ng taong bayan, then that would happen, no? So I think there are many options, but yeah, definitely that would be one of the possibilities na magkakaroon po.
Thank you, Sir Kybart. Okay, Ma'am Flor, Attorney Andy, you may want to add, or the floor is open for all the panelists to give their closing statements for us to end this forum already.
Si Sir Andy muna siguro.
Attorney Andy?
Well, on that point, no, as you know, in a democracy, dapat hindi violence, hindi dapat karahasan, dapat talaga, you determine the rightful government through an election. Ang pagkakaiba nga nitong 2022 is given this whole information ecosystem of fake news and disinformation, yun ang talagang hamon. And can you really believe that, if there is a majority vote, it is a majority vote that is based on information or disinformation? Nagsusulat ako ng konti for this Positively Filipino magazine. Sabi ko nga, during Holy Week, di ba, one of the reflections we had was that nung si Pontius Pilate, pinapili yung Jewish crowd kung sino ang gusto nilang piliin. Sino ba ang gusto nyo? Si Jesus o si Barabbas? Diba? Na parang, and at that time, iniisip ko, kung ako yung nasa crowd, sino yung pipiliin ko? Parang linaw, di ba? Black and white. Ano yung tama, ano yung mali. But at the same time, kung nga merong disinformation na nangyayari dyan, at the time siguro iniisip nila, hindi, ang gusto namin, kasi hindi naman namin siya kilala, or kasi yung mga political, inoloko kami and all that stuff. Hindi mo talaga alam eh. So, sa akin palagay, bago ang lahat, dapat natin siguraduhin na yung ating democracy works. But for democracy to work, you have to have right information. At yun talaga ang malaking hamon natin ngayon.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Andy. From Flor?
Okay. Unang-una, napapansin natin kung nakikinig tayo, nagbabasa tayo sa kung Facebook man ang news feeds ang nagiging source natin ng impormasyon kasi lumalabas yun daw ang mas marami ngayon. Ano? Napapansin nyo ang sinasabi po ni BBM sa kanyang mga recent rallies or sorties niya. Sasabihin niya, may mangyayaring pandaraya. We are now being conditioned that cheating will take place. As it is, parang nangangatog na sila kasi yung massive turnout in rallies para kay VP Leni at kay Kiko ay napakarami. At hindi nila matanggap na yung for so long that they built in the minds of the people that they were leading and the margin was so wide, it's impossible for VP Leni to catch up. Yun itinatak nila sa sa isip ng tao. Nakita nila sa sobrang dami naman pupunta sa rally, kinatatakot nila na those numbers might translate to votes and that would either lessen the gap or even beat Marcos. So ito masasabi ko. As it is right now, nagko-condition na isip natin, sila will agitate should VP Leni win. What if Bongbong Marcos wins? Itong una masasabi ko, ito ang dapat natin gawin. Unang-una, bumoto po tayo sa May 9. Hikayatin po lahat natin na miyembro ng ating pamilya, ng ating mga kaibigan, bumoto. Okay? Suriin nila kung sino talaga iboboto. Alamin kung sino ang dapat para sa bayang ito. Number 2, kung meron kayong pagkakataon na pwede kayong mag-volunteer sa PPCRB or NAMPREL or kung may like the law students, no? Pwede kayo maki-anib dun sa Lente, Legal Network for Truthful Elections. Maki-anib kayo, mag-serve kayo as poll watchers para sa araw ng halalan, ma-ensure nyo it's going to be peaceful and it will be an honest election. Pagkatapos po ng election, ang unang-una i-call out nyo pala yung mga vote buying and vote selling, no? Illegal po talaga yon. Pangatlo po, dapat maging vigilant po tayong lahat. Dapat ang katotohanan po na nasa balota ang lumabas. Kapag meron po na kayong nakikitang mali, kung maaari i-document nyo at iparating nyo po sa social media at meron pong plataforma ngayon, may bagong grupo kinreate kung saan tatanggap po sila ng mga reports mula sa mga botante kung ano yung mga nakita. Pero kailangan talagang totoo ito nangyari at dokumentado. Now, tama si Kev. Kung sakasakali naman talaga ay hindi, merong isang kampo na hindi naniniwala sa resulta ng eleksyon. Andyan po yung electoral protest. Mahabang paglalaban yan, alam natin. At kung sakasakali talaga na tayo ay nadaya Okay? So, kasi may maraming maling paraan, no, na ginawa nila. Tayo po ay magkaisa. Magkaisa na maging mapagmatsyag, magkaisa na kumilos. Kasi hindi po tayo dapat papayag na maloko na naman. At ibigay ang 6 na taon sa korupsyon, katiwalian. Hindi po tayo papayag muli. Kaya ang masasabi ko, sana po, as a parting word, sana po each one of us will do its role to make May 9, our national elections, a peaceful and honest, and shall we say, may the best person for this nation win. Maraming salamat.
Salamat po, Ma'am Flor. And Sir Keb?
I think nasabi na po nila lahat, no? But I really want to say na kailangan nating maging mapagmatsyag at maging mapanuri sa ating lipunan ngayon, lalo na sa election. No? And I think mas mainam na bumoto tayo ng tama at tama na galing sa informed, sabi nga ni Attorney Andy, informed vote, no? At hindi siya driven by disinformation. At bumoto po tayo hindi lang para sa ating sarili, kundi para sa ibang tao din, sa generations to come. At very important yan because this 2022 election will chart the next another 6 years of our lives. And we don't want to suffer a miserable life and another 6 years of miserable life. And that is why we need to vote for good governance, vote for someone who will uplift our lives. So yun lang po.
Maraming salamat po. At dyan nga po nagtatapos ang ating...
Sorry, Kiko, pwede ba ako? Last.
Yes, go ahead, Attorney Andy.
Oh, because again, very briefly, again, thank you to Dr. Lourdes Reyes Montinola and to Gigi Montinola, Diana Montinola, to the presidents that I served. Alam mo, ang kagandahan din ng FEU stands for what? And it always has been, kumbaga, embedded in my mind. And Dr. Lee J. Charles is there. FEU stands for fortitude, excellence, and uprightness. Hindi ka mawawala. Humanap ka ng kandidato na merong fortitude, excellence, and uprightness. Yun ang tamang kandidato. Simple. Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat, Attorney Andy. Napakaganda. Kandidato na merong fortitude, excellence, and uprightness. Okay. At ngayon, may we call on Mr. Martin Lopez, the Director of the FEU Center for the Arts, for giving and presenting our certificate of appreciation to our panel of reactors.
Thank you very much for being with us for FEUlikulahan and Kuwentuhan, featuring the film The Kingmaker. We would like to award these certificates of appreciation to our panelists, namely Kybart Pilikayan, Flor de Lis Abanto, and Attorney Andy Bautista for their valuable contributions as panelists during the FEUlikulahan and Kuwentuhan series featuring the Kingmaker. We would also like to give a certificate of appreciation to our moderator, Francis Esteban, for a job well done. In addition, our speakers and our moderator will receive a copy of this book called Feast, which is a compilation of recipes from the FEU community from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And Andy, we will find a way to send you a copy.
No, I will get it from you, Martin. I will go home to get it from you.
Okay. So
Thank
we'll
you.
save a
Thank
copy
you.
for you. And it's our small way of thanking everyone for sharing their knowledge, their time, their expertise on a very, very important subject, which will hopefully guide us further as we cast that very important ballot on May 9. And I would like to also thank our audiences, those who are here live in the Science Building, those who have been watching on Zoom and on Facebook. We apologize for any technical difficulties with Facebook, but we hope that Facebook audiences were then able to watch via Zoom.
Far Eastern onward, beloved alma mater.
That's right. That's right. And like I said, we cast our votes thinking of fortitude, excellence, and uprightness, looking for candidates who embody those values, which is actually part of the manifesto signed by students, alumni, faculty, and staff of FEU in their choice for candidates. We will also share with you a few other slides. So the first is to evaluate our FEUlikulahan and Kuwentuhan series. We have this evaluation form. You can just scan the QR code, or you can click on it on the comment box below. It will help us to assess our program, and we will try to cater to your requests for future events for FEUlikulahan and Kuwentuhan, but also for our regular season. So there is the QR code. Thank you. And again, you can also click on it in the chat. I'd like to thank the FEU guides for helping usher and helping our moderator with getting our questions. Thank you to our tech team. Thank you to our media center. Thank you to all our partners who made this screening possible. In particular, thanks to the FEU Student Development, FEU Institute of Arts and Sciences, Department of Communication, the FEU Institute of Arts and Sciences, Tamang Boto, the FEU International Studies Society, the FEU Political Science Society, the FEU Communication Society, the FEU Film Society, and the FEU Central Student Organization. Next week, we will be having CinePU, which is FEU's annual film competition produced and organized by the Film Society. There you have it on your screen. And then we also have Musica of Europa, which is the 13th run of the annual choral festival organized by FEU through the FEU Center for the Arts and the FEU Chorale and the European Union in the Philippines. We will start with a choral masterclass on May 7, followed by 3 concerts May 14, 21, and 28. Our next FEUlikulahan and Kuwentuhan series will feature the Manila Symphony Junior String Quartet, and that's on May 20. And we would also like to invite you all to watch our various cultural programs on our YouTube channel, starting with Lock Dance, which was the FEU Dance Company's virtual dance concert. Minamahal Kita, The Art of the Kundiman. And our tribute to Czech composer Antonín Dvořák. So again, that's all on our YouTube channel, the FEU Center for the Arts. Okay, with that,
Thank you, Sir Martin Lopez, for your closing remarks. And now we came to our end here for our discussion and for our film viewing. Guys, it's almost just 10 days before election season. And the challenge now is really up to us. How do we bring down or how do we bring and discuss the things that we have learned today to our cliques, to our communities, and basically to those that have very limited access to this kind of facts. Okay? So nandun ho ang challenge at kaakibat ng challenge na yon ang inspirasyon natin bilang mga miyembro ng FEU community. Hindi nga ba sabi natin na tayo sa FEU, we stand for fortitude, excellence, and uprightness. And nawa na ito yung maging guiding principles natin when we cast our votes on May 9. This has been your moderator, Francis Esteban from the Department of International Studies. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.